Denna Lambert is someone I've known on and off for many years, and she is a program manager with NASA Goddard's Flight Center, and she's going to share with us her story. And Liz and I will probably get you started, Denna, with a bunch of questions: who you are, what you do. You have an amazing profile, and it's very rare that we see blind people who are programmers who work for awesome places like NASA. And I think that's part of the draw. But before that, we want to know who you are, what inspired you to do what you wanted to do, what were your challenges going through college? Were you told that you couldn't achieve your career goal when you were younger? How did you persist? And talk to us about being a mom, adopting a son, and a guide dog user. So we kind of want to hear the whole story.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And you have about 45 minutes to share with us. So Orlando, you are more than welcome to put your questions in the chat, as are all of you, actually, and then we'll open it up around 30 past the hour to Q&A. But why don't you introduce yourself? It's a pleasure having you on Careers Plus with Society for the Blind. And good evening. I know you're on the East Coast. I hope you have something to keep you awake.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to talk to y'all. I got to check out some of these places that y'all listed, where you want to live. For myself, I am in Greenbelt, Maryland, which is on it's in the Mid-Atlantic region, right above DC. And but I am originally from Arkansas, so as the night goes on, I might have a little bit more of a Southern accent. But as far as where I would love to live, it would be probably on a lake somewhere where I could go swimming, but also do like the campfire thing. But I would like to also be able to go to the grocery store because I like to eat. So I think that's a requirement for all places that we want to live. So I just turned 40 years old actually today. So it's kind of cool to hang out with y'all.
Happy birthday. Wow.
So that either makes me very old compared to some of you all. I do have, I think, some gray hair coming in, but the good thing about being blind, I don't really care about that so much. Or I feel very young, meaning that I am still, I feel like I'm still at the beginning of kind of what life has to offer. So, all right. So I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. My parents are, they are still living, so they are in their late 70s. But my mom is sighted, and my dad is blind. But he did not grow up in an era where they widely taught Braille. So he doesn't know Braille, and he isn't really able to read print. But they were very adamant about me going to school and getting an education, and they did the best that they could to make sure that happened. So I attended public school, so I was mainstreamed. That was kind of the phrase that they used when I was growing up. But I attended public school, but I also attended the School for the Blind for summer programs and workshops and that sort of thing, which was a great experience because I felt like I was around people who understood what it was like to be blind. I wasn't teased solely based on having really thick glasses, but in public school, sometimes I was the only blind kid in the class. Sometimes I wanted to try to hide the fact that I was blind, or couldn't read something or couldn't see something. So I think for a while it was hard to build up my confidence to know that I could do just about anything that my classmates could do. But I did get a really good education in taking math and science classes, which I really enjoyed. So um, one of the organizations that my parents wanted me to get involved with was called the National Society of Black Engineers, and they had various workshops on kind of like the egg drop challenge, or building a bridge using popsicle sticks and that sort of thing. And actually I enjoyed it. I felt like I could use my brain to come up with ideas or solutions to the problems that they were presenting. And that kind of put me on an even playing field with, the other students that were involved. So I had mentors from those uh, programs that led into me deciding to go to college at the University of Arkansas, and majoring in electrical engineering. Um, I think I've always been kind of a science geek. I was the one that would sit in front of the TV and watch Star Trek. Um, and I was a bit drawn to the whole Geordie LaForge, uh, storyline of him being a blind engineer, and but of course he had the technology to be able to have some kind of vision. But I felt like he was a pivotal um, person in the Enterprise crew. But so I majored in electrical engineering, and I did pretty okay in those first couple of classes. But that's where I did face um some questions and concerns once I got into like my circuits class, where I was required to create circuit diagrams, and using um, conductors and insulators, and all sorts of things, and having to use different measuring tools that were not accessible. um, I my confidence kind of was shaken a bit. Here my professors are asking me these questions of how am I going to do, X, Y, or Z, and I didn't have a solution. Um, and I think that's where I struggled a bit. I did try reaching out to um different tutors and clubs on campus. One thing I was also dealing with, I was having some fluctuations in my vision. So uh when I was growing up in public school, and the way things were taught back then, I was not taught Braille. And that was something I wish I had been taught. Even with the vision that I had, I wish I had the Braille skills that could have helped take in some of that stress of that eye strain that I experienced, and having to, read a bunch of material, and that I could have kind of, if I needed to, I could have used my vision for certain things, but also used Braille for other things. But anyways, um, so
Did you, this is Richard, let me just interject. Did you advocate for Braille? Did you even know it was an option, or did they say because you had too much vision that you just didn't need it? And that's what happened to me in the fifth grade. And my,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And that's an interesting question. Because I know I struggled with, and the reason why I mentioned my parents. So I think the 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 thought was at the time is, if you had any vision, or a significant amount of vision. I think my vision was like 2400, something like that. I was using large print of about like 18 point, 20 point
yeah.
font. But I had to hold it up, like 2 inches, 3 inches from my face, I think. um so I could reprint my TVI issue it in large materials. I got these really big heavy books and that sort of thing. But I had some friends that were totally blind, so of course they use Braille. I think I struggled with the notion that I had to use all of the vision that I had, and if I used a tool like Braille or a cane, then somehow I was giving up on the vision that I had, or I was portraying myself as not having as much vision, which, using Braille or using large print, it doesn't have to be an either or. It can be whatever tool works best for you. But you have to be taught those tools first. So I, my mom was resistant to me learning Braille, because I
Sure.
think she struggled with the idea of, that I would be considered blind versus the word low vision or visually impaired. Somehow the word blind somehow sounds much more severe than, those other
Daunting. Yeah.
terms, which, for me
Yeah.
now at 40 years old, I don't really care.
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know, the word blind is not like a word of shame. You know, it doesn't have to be. I know a lot of people may struggle with that. So when I was in my second semester of my sophomore year, and I was really struggling with keeping up in classes, and I wasn't doing well with my exams and stuff. I was on a full scholarship, and I was afraid of losing that scholarship because I couldn't keep up. I had to keep a 3.0 GPA, and I was not doing that. So if you combine that with kind of the skepticism of professors who had never worked with a blind student, um, I think that's where I let go of that dream of being an engineer. And if I could kind of talk to myself, back in, that sophomore year of college, I would say there is someone out there who has figured this out. Let's go find them. Um,
Right.
and I think what you guys have now and what we have now available to us, is we have Facebook, we have email listservs, we have um, a much wider and broader network of access to people who have done things that, my dad would never have been able to dream of doing. Um, so I didn't know during my sophomore year that NASA had blind, electrical engineers or mechanical engineers working. I didn't know that. And if I wish I had more mentors who could have suggested, hey, why don't we reach out to NASA or some organization that knows about blind people? I think that was the missing piece. So I switched my major from engineering to business. And then I finished my math degree, because electrical engineering requires a lot of math. So I you know at the end of the day, I'm happy with my decision, but it's something I wish I could have gone back and say, hey, no, I can graduate with an engineering degree and become that engineer that I wanted to be. um so once um once I started, completing my courses in the business program and the math program, I started, meeting employers, and recruiters, and talking to them about, different jobs. Um, and at the same time, it wasn't as emphasized when I was in college. I think the thought was, hey, you have to finish your degree in 4 years. I think the recommendation is now that if you can take a semester or a summer and do an internship somewhere, that is most important, to get that time in with employers um, before you graduate. And it doesn't even have to. Ideally, we would love for it to be a paid position because, hey, who else could use money?
Sure.
But even if it's a volunteer thing, you can still count that as experience, whether it is you're shadowing, whether it's engineers or scientists or biologists or computer programmers, whatever it is. That would be one of the biggest recommendations that I would say for you guys. I'm assuming everybody is in high school, middle school, high school.
Yeah, most of our
No.
folks, some people are in college, and we've got some teachers listening in, but the majority of our folks are in high school, and a couple of college students.
Okay. So even as in high school, you can start doing some internships. And it doesn't have to be in one particular area. You can, try a couple of different things, to kind of see what your niche is. And a niche is kind of what your passion area is. What are you interested in doing? And because you're young, you can what you find it from most adults is that they start out in one career and they move on to something else. So so I graduated in 2003. At the time I did not have a job lined up. So I graduated and I went back home to Little Rock to live with my parents. And that definitely is kind of a deflating experience to be able to live in a dorm on your own and do your own thing, and then now you're back in your mom's
Your old room.
house. But so that's where I started, hitting the streets. I started interviewing more. And of course I came up against where I would interview with people and somehow it go home, and then I would notice that the job description would change, that you had to have a driver's license. Now, of course, we all know that that is illegal to do, and is wrong. It's unethical to do, but unfortunately, that is reality, or that was reality for me at the time. But I kept going to job fairs and conferences. I was being, kind of like what the Hamilton song says, being young and scrappy. I was going there. I didn't have anything else to do. So I did meet a NASA recruiter there, and at one of the job fairs that I attended, and he asked, would you be willing to move from Arkansas? And I guess that's part of the reason why I asked you guys, where would you like to live? And that can change over time. Yes, you may say the beach, but it may change 5 years from now as you get more exposure and kind of what is beyond where you live in your state right now. You may like something else in another part of the country. And him asking, would I be willing to move? My answer was yes. I had to have enough confidence to know that I did not want to continue living in my mom's house, my parents' house, even though I love them very much. I wanted something more for myself. So thankfully, he was able to get me an interview with a manager there in their it's called procurement, but essentially it's like our contracting office for the government. So the government hires businesses to help do the work that we need done within the government. So so even though he helped me get access to the interview, it was still on me to have practice with doing mock interviews with mentors and coming up with clear and concise answers, and kind of getting comfortable with that kind of uneasiness in your stomach when you feel scared and unsure. So thankfully I was able to do a really good interview, and also thankfully he was willing to take a chance and hire me. So that's where I started out my first official job, my first real job with benefits.
Night. Yeah. Yeah.
um, as a contract specialist at NASA Goddard. But let me step back a little bit. My very first job, I wanted a piece of assistive technology, and we know that like vocational rehab will pay for certain items that you need for school and that sort of thing. Um, but sometimes we all know that that can take a while to go through all the paperwork and the rigmarole that happens with getting approvals from, the state or from rehab. So my parents said, hey, why not try and get a job? I couldn't necessarily go do the waitressing thing at a restaurant. I couldn't go bartend because I was under 18 at that point. Um, but I could talk on the phone.
Mhm.
And so my first job was actually to do surveys. So I was that annoying person that calls you right when you're about to eat dinner to say, hi, I'm Denna Lambert from Marketing Insights. Can I ask you to do a survey? It'll only take 10 minutes. So that was my very first job. um, but even though I hated it and I got hung up on the phone many, many, many times, they still paid me by the hour. So I was able to pay for, I think it was, oh my goodness, Richard, you have to tell me. It was a type and speak because I needed a way of
Right.
taking
Right.
notes on my own. So a type and speak was kind of the back in the day version of a Braille note or a PackMate, if people are still using those.
Oh man.
Um,
Like
and
15
then,
years ago.
yeah, yeah. And I also bought my first computer. And then I had, it wasn't JAWS, it was Vocalize, I believe. Vocalize. It was a GW Micro screen reading
Oh,
software.
window eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Vocalize was the DOS version,
Right.
and then
That's
Window
going way
Eyes.
back.
Yeah. See, Richard and I are old.
I am old. You're not that old.
But what I would say is, um, getting that job and making that, I think it was like $2,000. It was the equivalent of what our sighted peers have to do, or what a lot of them will do is get their job with mowing lawns or working at restaurants or washing cars or whatever to buy their first vehicle. For me, buying that type and speak and that computer and screen reader, that was like buying my first car. I felt a sense of independence and a sense of pride that this was mine. So it kind of taught me a lesson of hey, if I want something, I'm gonna have to go and work for it or at least contribute to it, because I may not always be able to depend on a rehab agency to do it for me. I could not depend on my counselor, even though she was a great counselor, um, to go buy that stuff for me, even though maybe it was a part of her job. It would
Dina,
have taken.
I'm gonna give you a second to breathe and get a glass of water. I only say that because I'm going to interject. Having been a rehab counselor, and word to all of our lovely students, having been a rehab counselor, I loved it when my clients, my blind clients, would come to me and say, "Hey, Richard, I really need this expensive computer. I know it might take you several months to get that computer. I'm gonna pay for part of it, but can you help me?" And when you do that, your rehab counselor's ears open up and they're like, "Well, you're really buying into your rehab process. It's not just I want this, I need this," which is all relevant, but it's also nice to hear that as a client you put some skin in the game, and I think that's really important too.
Yeah, exactly. So, while she did not have to buy technology for me in the beginning, um, what that did, I think it did show her that I was serious I just wasn't looking for the newest, coolest toy out there. Um, NASA offered to help me move to the East Coast. They don't do that sort of thing now, but back then they did. Um, but what she paid for is for a trip for me to help to find an apartment and transportation and that sort of thing. So that was her way of really helping me meet that goal of becoming employed.
That's
So
cool.
um so I I moved to the DC area to Greenbelt in 2004, started out as a contract specialist. And while we, as an agency, have put people on the moon and we, now we've put, rovers and SUVs on Mars, even back in 2004, everything was still primarily in print. It was very inaccessible. So that's where I had to really get in this mindset of, okay, I'm gonna have to either come up with my own solutions or I'm gonna be out of a job. So because I had these stacks of what we call contract files with print and sometimes handwritten material, and um, no way of accurately accessing that information. Yes, there was Kurzweil, which was an OCR, but it wasn't as accurate as what I needed it to be.
And things
So
weren't as portable back then as they are now. You can't just have
yes,
a scanner in your pocket. I mean, there was no Be My Eyes or Voice Dream Scanner or any of that.
exactly. So I hope we're not sounding like dinosaurs, but what I'm trying to point out here is that as you go along in your journey, it's like you kind of have to, really go for something, and you'll feel the success of it, but then you may hit the next barrier along the way. And I know it sucks, and it's you can have that moment of, hey, it sucks being blind, why me, kind of thing, but you got to keep pushing forward. So that's where, once I was within the agency, I got a chance to talk with other blind employees, and they helped me with writing, some scripts with JAWS to make some of the IT systems more accessible to me. I did have to reach out to our civil rights office to help get the vendor to do some of that change, some of those changes themselves. On that, I did have to kind of negotiate with my boss to say, hey, I can't necessarily access, these printed, files. Is there something else that I can do? And some employers are flexible in that. If you are willing to show that, hey, I'm willing to do the work, but let's kind of talk about how do we go about doing the work. And that's really helped out a lot. Um, so I've been with NASA for 17 years now. So I started out as a contract specialist. Um, then I got into doing, I guess, advocating for employees with disabilities. And I went into the role of disability program manager, which I really enjoyed. I love talking with people, trying to figure out solutions and that sort of thing. But I think I kind of let go of that you know kind of technical dream that I had of working with, directly on the science that we were doing. So actually, for the past um I would say 8 or 9 years or so, I've been making my way back to the technical work that we do at NASA. So now I'm a project manager and I work with our astrophysics division in coming up with um, kind of new concepts for machine learning and artificial intelligence, and the way we use it for processing lots and lots of data um, that are, is coming back from satellites, or, our various instruments that we have out in space. So while I'm not an astrophysicist myself, I am using that background that I got in electrical engineering and computer science, and working with colleagues as a team, who's comprised of like a lot of different disciplines. That's one thing that's really great about NASA, is that you can try out a job for a while. It's called a detail, so it's almost like an internship, and you kind of kick butt, and do the best that you can, and if it's a good fit, they'll bring you on in a team, in that team, to continue doing the work. So I'm really enjoying it now, and who knows where I'll be in another 5 or 10 years from now. But even though I am sad that I switched majors because of someone else's doubts or fears, I still held on to that sense of resilience. Meaning, we talk a lot about resilience, and what that really means is kind of the ability to kind of get back on your feet, still trying something new, and being able to feel comfortable in making mistakes and still trying it again. um I know that I probably got 40 rejection letters from different employers that I had applied to, and I was at one point considering going back to school, because hey, I know how to go to school. My dad didn't like that idea, because I think he felt that, hey, we can't continue to pay for college.
Right.
So, so he didn't want me to have like 4 or 5 degrees and no job. So,
Let me stop you there for a second. I see that a lot. I saw that a lot as a rehab counselor. I get the more educated that my clients were, they were actually the harder ones to convince to get a job. Someone who was just out of high school or with their AA degree, oh, I'll do anything, Richard, get me a job. But the people who had their bachelor's or master's degrees, oh, school was fun and it was comfortable. That's why they wanted to go back to
yeah,
school. I'm like, no, let's get uncomfortable and let's go get a job. And that's the trick of being a rehab counselor and kind of a mentor.
exactly. Um, so actually, as far as what tools I use, so I what I find is that there is no perfect tool. So while I use JAWS, I find that NVIDIA has a, a a different way of accessing material than JAWS does. So I may switch and use that. I think back then when Window Eyes was around, I would use Window Eyes and switch around.
Right.
Um, just because it may have been able to access whether it was websites or systems a bit differently. I do use readers more in like my personal life. So now that we have Ira, I use that service now. For getting around, I do have a guide dog. Um, I got her from the Seeing Eye, and I've been using a guide dog since I was in my sophomore year. But your guide dog can't go everywhere.
Right.
So it was important to me to have good cane skills. So I got the cane skills and the braille skills before I got my dog. And now she's kind of nearing the retirement age. I think I might, wait to get another dog, again. So it is important to continually use the cane skills so that, if you need to switch out, you can. Um, and then a couple of years ago, I got this wild, crazy idea that I wanted to become a mom. And so I went through the process um, of deciding how I was going to become a mom. Some people go the route of getting married or finding a partner and having a child that way. That was not the route that I took. So actually, I chose to go through adoption. And so that's where I went through an agency or an organization that works with mothers who are not able to take care of their child, who are looking for families who would like to serve in that role. So I did that, and I was really afraid that my blindness would be a limiting factor. But again, um, I think if I had enough confidence for myself and in myself, I think it really helped to alleviate fears. So that's where I was not going to let someone else's fear about me being a blind mom take away that dream from me. I had already learned that lesson from, switching majors from being an engineer. Um, and definitely being a mom is a very serious decision. It's a very big decision. But I felt ready. I talked to a lot of blind parents, a lot of single parents, and talked through what I needed as resources and tools. And thankfully, a family did select me to be my son's mom. And so now he is 2 years old. So there is no instruction manual for any kid growing up. So your parents are always having to learn new ways of teaching you. So I am learning that myself, but having good mentors and other parents that I can talk to helps me to hopefully do a good job of being a mom to my son.
Wow, Dina, thank you so much. And we're gonna. I know Patricia's got a dozen questions, as does Pavel, and everyone's got questions. But Liz and I get to go first because we're the bosses. But no, seriously, you actually gave us a preview of next week. We're going to be talking about blind parenting and adulting and what it's like being a parent and good stuff. So let me ask you one or two questions. We are going to ask you guys to unmute yourselves in about 5 minutes to ask questions. And Liz, if you have a question too, totally get ready. I always just want to ask, when you went through the adoption process, I'm going to save all the NASA questions for all the NASA geeks, but when you went through the adoption process, at any point, and I did follow this on Facebook, and I don't remember this part, but did you have to disclose your blindness to the parents, the family who picked you knew you were blind, or did that not play into the whole adoption process?
Okay, so that is a great question. So the way that adoption works, you go through an organization. So whether it is you're going through a state agency or a private agency. In my case, I was going through a private agency, and you kind of create this. You have to go through a lot of training and inspections and have a social worker come and talk to you. So they're inevitably going to find out that I'm blind. So I, it was such a big kind of factor. I put it out there at the very front, like, hey, have you all worked with uh, individuals who are blind or people with disabilities? And I kind of watched their reaction. And some agencies were like, no, we don't think that's a good thing. Then at this point, I was the shopper. I said, hey, nope, that's not a good fit. I don't want somebody, to be scared, of this. I'm not scared of this, so I don't want them to be scared. So I did find an agency that was familiar with working with people with disabilities, because ultimately they're your first contact with families, birth families. But one interesting thing that did come up during the adoption process, you create like a video or a book, what's called a profile book, where you kind of tell a little bit about yourself. You know, you put pictures in it, and you kind of talk about, you know, what you're, who you are, and how you grew up, and what plans you have for this child. And the pictures that I had were of me with a cane, a white cane, or my guide dog. And um, someone had asked me, don't you have any other pictures, you know, where these things aren't in there? And I'm like, whoa, what? Hold up. You know, using a cane is part of who I am, or having my guide dog is a part of, these things aren't going to disappear. And I don't want to, you know, surprise a family for such a big decision, because I don't want them to feel like I'm hiding something else. So we talked about it, and we kept the pictures that had my cane or my dog, or, you know, whatever. And for the family that chose me, I did have a paragraph in there that did say that I am blind. I use alternative techniques to get things done and keep, you know, myself and others safe. And for them, it wasn't a big deal. They picked me for the things that I was involved in my community. In my community, I was a Girl Scout leader for a couple of years, and I coached a robotics team, and you know, I love music, and those were the things that they were really hoping that their child could experience, and that's what they wanted. So the fact that I was blind wasn't as a big fear that I thought it would be for them. So we talked about it, but they they were focused on something else.
Thank you. Liz, you covered so many different themes that we talk about throughout our calls: perseverance, discrimination, overcoming adversity, making those decisions, or making things work to your benefit, learning from mistakes. And I mean, you just gave us a great narrative of life isn't, a bowl of cherries. Things happen along the way, and it's what you make of it, and how you go from college to going back home to being that scrappy person, to be that job seeker. I mean, it takes every bone in your body not to say, oh, this is comfortable, I'm going to stay home and go back to school, because that's what often happens. So thank you for sharing and being an open book. Liz, do you have any questions for Denna?
I do. Denna, my question for you is, can you talk a little bit about some of the, maybe if you have strategies or techniques, or how do you deal with people that have lower expectations of you, that don't know everything that you have accomplished? Do you have a particular way of dealing with people like that?
I do. So part of it is kind of recognizing that someone may have a level of discomfort. So I remember working with a new team, and they heard that I was blind, and what I found is that if I bring up the issue of being blind, I have more control over how the conversation goes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, hey, I know this is probably a new experience of being around someone who's blind, you know, or working with someone who's blind, I definitely want to let you know that, um, you know, there's going to be a level of learning or adjustment for myself and everyone else, so that it's not a way of saying, hey, they're wrong or stupid for having these concerns or fears, but we can have a conversation about it. And I think as long as you can get people to talk about what's happening, or say, hey, let's give this a try, or let's see what happens, that gives you a little bit more flexibility in kind of showing them. I know that it is easy to get into kind of this mindset of, oh, I have to prove them wrong, I have to prove them wrong, and that is true, but what sometimes the downside of that is that it can get exhausting. So that's
Mhm.
where it is important to say, hey, let's work together to come up with some solutions that is doable for you or me as a team member or as an employee or as a supervisor. um, and say, hey, let's see how this works. And that's where um, gaining some of that confidence from working in like internships or volunteer opportunities really is kind of like that proving ground for doing that kind of work before you have to really do it um, when you're on the job somewhere.
Great, thank you, Dina. And then my follow-up question, it's totally, it's on a different topic. So you have a 2-year-old son. What has been one of the most challenging or interesting experiences you've had with him so far?
Um, Oh my goodness. Well, so when he was a baby, I felt like it was a little easier, because he would either be on my chest or he would kind of be on my back like a backpack, and I could just take him and go. And so
Mhm.
that was, pretty easy. But now that he's kind of turned into his own person, um I feel like I have to anticipate kind of what's ahead now. So I think recently, Richard probably saw this, but I took my son on a bus ride, and it was kind of a learning opportunity for me, just because as a blind person, we're going to be taking public transit, as things
Mhm.
open up more. We're going to be taking buses and trains, and this is going to be a part of life. We may not always be able to take a car somewhere. Um, but I was kind of hesitant and scared, because it's like, oh my goodness, he's able to walk, he's able to run. But for me and him, he's been used to communicating with me verbally or through touch. And, so it kind of let me know, hey, I'm doing a good job of showing him how to communicate with me. But he enjoyed it. He's been talking about that bus ride. He calls it buster ride. He's been talking about the bus ride ever since, because it was a day where he saw something brand new. And of course, he's sighted, so he's starting to point to things. So I may not always know what he's pointing at, but as he starts to gain more words for being able to describe things, that's where, he's going to learn so much more about his environment than just what he sees. We'll talk about, oh,
Mhm.
what did you hear? Oh, what did you smell? You know, so that's where I'm learning a lot, but also knowing that he's having really meaningful experiences too at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Dina. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Let's see. All right, who's got questions? If you can raise your hand, that would be preferable, or put them in the chat. I know you all have questions. Diana Cortez, you're up, and then Lisa, you're after Lisa Anareshma. You're after Diana.
I first off, thank you for celebrating your birthday with us.
I have a bottle of wine that I got ready as well. So
that's nice.
I'll do my own celebrating a little bit later.
Awesome.
So I have two questions. The first one is, how would you approach an organization or company who is hesitant to give a student with low vision or blind an internship opportunity?
So, so what, and are you a teacher, or
Yes,
like a rehab counselor?
a teacher.
So it may help, to offer to do like a small like orientation or session for managers or employees to be able to kind of learn a little bit more about like assistive technology or simple like pain techniques, or to be like a forum to be able to ask questions, and especially if it's an internship that lasts, let's say, 4 weeks or 6 weeks. We're not necessarily talking about something that's going to last 5 years. So I think it's something to say, hey, this is a learning experience for the students, but it's also a learning experience for you guys as well, where you gain kind of that awareness. A lot of companies right now are really big on the whole diversity kind of
Yeah.
phrase. That's a thing. But I think you as a teacher or anyone, being willing to say, hey, you have to benefit from this as well. So if the student is doing a great job, awesome. But if they are not doing a great job and you're giving them the feedback, that is much of a learning experience of knowing when you're losing a job as it is as keeping a job. So, and that is okay as well. So they know that if it's not working out, you can make changes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And my follow-up question is, do you have any recommendations for internship opportunities that you know of?
So what I'll do is I will send Richard at least some of the internship information on like that we have at NASA, where like in California, or around the region, and then at some other agencies. So I'll send that, and he can send that out to you guys if y'all have an email listserv.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. And that's a good thing. I mean, always keep your eyes and ears open, everyone, for internships, and now for next year or when you're in college, because those things are often out early, and depending on what the job market is, a lot of people are going to go for internships, paid and otherwise, to really get that experience. And before you know it, though, I know a lot of internships often do lead to employment, and I've seen that with a lot of friends on the East Coast, especially for the federal government. So it's a really good pathway onto good career level jobs. So don't
Yeah,
discount it. Go ahead.
and what I would also say is definitely encourage your students to be involved with um different organizations that are a part of like whatever they're interested in. So if you want to be a meteorologist, start going to the meteorological society, to their conferences. They have student chapters or events that are geared towards those, because that's where a lot of employers will go. They're not necessarily going out to the state agency for the blind looking for
No,
interns,
they're not. Yep, that's true.
but they are going to those like professional conferences to meet students. And while it may be a shock for a recruiter to see a blind student, they are going to see a student who happens to be blind but who is also interested in their career field. And establishing those, I think, networking and being comfortable in talking to people, not just about blindness topics, but just about general things, whether it's sports or the latest happenings or whatever, just because a lot of opportunities come out of networking relationships.
And just because you might get rejected or be told no, you can still follow up. Well, if you can't hire me, who might? What other agencies do you know? So keep that dialogue going with those agencies, even if they're not ready for you, because you never know what comes out of it. And I've seen that work as well. Lisa, you're up.
Dina, I have so many questions for you. I adopted 2 girls from India, and I did not mention anything to our adoption agency about my vision loss, because I know for that country, we wouldn't have a lot of possibilities. And the adoption agency was questionable if they would, accept somebody adopting who was visually impaired and having a degenerative disease. I have retinitis pigmentosa, X-linked form. And there's a lot of people in my family affected, about 15 of us over 5 generations. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was curious about what caused your vision loss. And you said your dad also lost his vision. So is that a retinal degenerative disease that caused your vision loss?
Yeah. So, okay. So that's where definitely getting into the nuts and bolts of adopting. In the international realm, yes, blindness is, unfortunately, that is where I would have kind of not shared as openly about my blindness, because yes, there are countries who are not as far along in I guess accepting disability as a characteristic of parents. So I chose to adopt domestically, so within America. So that was something that it was a different playing field. But I was born with congenital cataracts and glaucoma. So it was something that was passed down from my dad's side of the family. And that he has as well. Of course, the techniques for treating cataracts and glaucoma has changed a lot, but it was something that we still have to kind of manage with um, eye exams and eye pressure and that sort of thing.
Did you decide to adopt and not biologically have your own child because you were afraid of passing it down?
Actually, no. Actually, I wanted to adopt a blind child, but I didn't know quite how to, go about doing that. And because also you can find blind children more often in international adoption, but as a single person, that was really hard financially to do. I think I would have been okay if, having children biologically. But I also was struggling with some medical issues that would have affected my reproductive kind of abilities. So I have endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. So it would have made getting pregnant a lot harder.
Understandable.
Thanks, Lisa. Rocco and then Karen.
Okay. I have 2 questions. One for you, Richard, and one for Denna. So my question for you, Richard, is, you were kind of talking about how, like, at some point, like, where people were getting like bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and that sort of thing, are kind of less restricted to getting a job. Is that still the case when their career requires that kind of degree?
No, and what I want to clarify is that we definitely, as rehab professionals, want to encourage you to go after your career goal and your career dreams. At the same time, work experience is very important. A lot of people who aren't blind are working part-time, after courses on evenings or weekends. And often a lot of blind people I worked with at the time weren't working or didn't have work experience. And it makes it hard to get a job if you come out of high or college with a bachelor's or master's and you have little to no work experience, even an internship. Were you going to say something, Dina?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So I am a hiring manager when it comes to bringing in entry level employees, and that is something that we look for. We want to know that you know how to work with other people. We want to know that you can take direction or take information and run with it. But in classes, we want to see something more than just classes. Of course, if you are wanting to become a scientist and that field requires you to get a PhD, then yes, you're going to need to continue on with your education. But along the way, you're going to need to take a semester, you're going to need to take a summer, you're going to need to do something or work in a lab or something to show that you have work experience.
Yeah. And thank you, Rocco, for asking. And your question for Dina?
Yeah. So my other question is, when you were sort of coaching that robotics team and were a Girl Scout troop leader, how did you like come into sort of mentoring other people?
Okay, so
And what
kind of roles? Is that your question?
what was your question?
You're asking how did I start doing that sort of thing?
And what kind of challenges did you face along the way?
Okay, cool. So with being a Girl Scout leader, I grew up as a Girl Scout. So I was in Scouting from probably when I was in the first grade on up till I graduated high school. So I knew what the scouting experience should be like. I reached out to the local council here, because again, I was, footloose and free and kind of wanted something else to do. So I reached out to them and say, hey, do you have any volunteer opportunities? And they were actually starting up a scouting troop in my local area, and they were looking for leaders. So I had to go through the training for that to meet their requirements. I also had a co-leader, so it was not something that I had to do by myself, but we actually worked together. So there were some things that would have been hard for me to do that, would have required, driving. But, having someone to work with to lead the girls, what you'll probably find as an adult is that there are a lot of people that want to see stuff done. They're just looking for someone to step up and actually do it. So that's where you may not find as much resistance when it comes to volunteering for things, because people are just waiting for someone to ask, to do it. And then what it required was kind of working with my co-leader, figuring out what were the strengths that I had, which was for me, creating documents and spreadsheets and budgets and that sort of thing. And then her strength was, kind of doing the kind of decorating, outreach stuff. So we worked together on it. The robotics thing, that was, I did reach out to a couple of, I think the Texas School for the Blind had some robotics teams. So I did reach out to them for kind of what, how did they do the coding? Because I was going to have to teach some concepts to the students. And they use what is that, Minecraft? They used something else that was more visual because this team was sighted. But I, used a different software operating system to code the bots.
Thank you, Rocco. Miss Karen, you have got a question.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Dina, for being here. Happy birthday, fellow Taurus. I'm also a Taurus.
Yes. Stubborn and bullheaded. So.
Exactly. True that. I had two questions. I'm just curious. My first one would be, how did you manage with having intersectional identities once at NASA? As a female, you identify as visually impaired. If you identify as someone of color, like how did you manage to have those identities and use that as a strength as opposed to employers seeing that
Yeah,
as a weakness?
right, right. So, I think definitely that intersectionality. You know, I am a Black woman, so I did, you know, actually reach out to our local chapter of the Society of Black Engineers, to do some kind of lay of the land of like, hey, where, you know, where do people go and where do people kind of meet up for lunch, to kind of have not so much mentors, but more of like peer-to-peer relationships, that I really wanted, with people who, you know, experience life as a Black woman.
Right.
Um, and but I it's one of those things of, you know, um whether you are a Hispanic woman or part of the LGBTQ plus community, like, yeah, there's so many aspects of ourselves that, you know, we can branch out beyond just meeting the blind community, that we can actually say, hey, how do I get these parts of myself kind of addressed, you know, um, and have like a safe space to talk about different issues. So a lot of organizations or a lot of employers now will have what's called employee resource groups. And you may actually do Google searches or whatever to find those. And they actually may have like different workshops at those agencies, so that you can do more meet and greet and get to know folks. At NASA, we have different ERGs or employee resource groups to do that, and they often will have schools come out, or they go recruiting at schools, and that's another way to kind of get your foot in the door, that may lead you towards getting in front of a hiring manager.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you. And then my second question is, if you what suggestions can you offer for someone transitioning from an internship to an employment position, and what opportunities exist in terms of machine learning at NASA, as well as like the programming languages that are most commonly used? Because I just started a postdoc recently. For those who don't know, that basically means research experience after you basically work in a lab after
Yes,
earning a
yes.
doctorate. So I'm on the job market fairly soon. So that's why I'm
Oh my
curious.
goodness. Oh wow. So definitely I want to get in touch with you, because we do have a postdoctoral fellowship program.
Oh, nice.
So definitely.
Yeah,
Please,
no, for sure. I'm
yeah,
in
please get
neuroscience, and I've heard of
about
people
that.
who go into like engineering.
Because
So
yeah.
Karen, email me and I'll put you in touch with Dina by email.
Sounds good. Thank you. I will. I don't mean to take up the space,
No,
but
no,
I was
no,
just
no.
curious.
See, that's
You're
what
good.
happens.
You're good.
You
Yeah.
kind of let people know what you're looking for and what you need. And if I'm able to help, awesome. But I'll help you get in contact with people who can also help.
Awesome, will do. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Karen. It's really good to hear your voice. I haven't heard from you in a
Same here.
while.
No, for sure. It's good to hear yours also.
Yeah. Let's see, Patricia.
This is kind of random, but because I want to adopt in the future, how can you tell if a adoption agency is legit? Because like I've heard the horror stories.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes, that is a thing. So there on social media, there are Facebook groups for hopeful adoptive families. So like I'm on a couple of them, one of them being the domestic adoption support group. And I see a lot of people ask, hey, have you had experience with such and such agency? And inevitably somebody will respond and say, hey, I had a great experience, or some people will post, no, stay away, here's what happened. So definitely, you got to do your interviews, your homeworks, ask, to speak with families who have adopted through them. Because yes, adoption can be a very beautiful thing, but it also has a lot of kind of landmines as well.
Yeah, because I want to do international,
Yes,
compared
yeah.
to like yourself that you did domestic, like in the future. I'm still in high school, but I know I want to do this.
Yeah. So
don't-
that's where, definitely a lot of the major adoption agencies will have conferences or orientation sessions. So, just keep an eye out, and talk with more families, that have adopted, and because
Yeah,
they probably still keep in touch with the agencies that they worked with, and they can definitely give you some advice.
I know Lisa does.
Yeah, I was just about to chime in. I was just going to
Yeah.
say too, it helps to stick to some of the bigger adoption agencies that have been around for a really long time.
Yes,
Some of them
yes.
have been around like 30, 40 years. Like I'm thinking of World Association of Children and Parents, which recently merged with, starts with an H, the big one, not Hilton. What is it? I can't remember right now, but that's one of the things that I saw happening a lot is a lot of the smaller agencies are merging and closing down. So you kind of want to go a little bit bigger.
Yeah. It is something that I would say for me personally, I took I would say almost like a year, to, research, interview, go to sessions, talk to people before I actually submitted my paperwork, just because I wanted to make sure I was, going to a good, legit organization that was not just, snatching babies.
Yeah.
Because, that is a big fear. Is I don't want some woman coerced in giving up her baby. That's not what I'm doing this for.
Especially like for me, since I want to adopt from another country, like I don't want to, get this baby and then, bring it back and only to find out that no, it isn't,
Yeah. And so that's where, definitely like what I think was it Lisa was saying is definitely going with an agency that's been around for a while, that's established, that has a reputation, that you can talk to people who've actually, not just one or two, but definitely more than a handful that have gone through this, especially recently, because I know a lot of the countries have been going through, I think through the Trump era, there were a lot of changes in the adoption world, and I think some of it is changing, but I know a lot of families who have been held up because of I guess just some of the challenges with getting through, let's say with China and some of the other countries as well. I think some of that is changing, but at least for the families that I know that have been trying to adopt recently, it's taken a bit more.
Thanks, Patricia. Let me ask others on the call who have been quiet. Claudia, Dave, Eric, some of our new folks. Any questions from you guys?
All right, this is Eric.
Yes, sir.
I saw in the email that you're a triathlete.
Yeah. Before Caleb came along, I'm trying to get back to it, but yeah, I actually did a couple of sprints. I was training for an Olympic triathlon before I really got involved with the process. But yeah, it was something. I had this crazy thing of so I got into cycling first, and really enjoyed it. I don't know if any of y'all know Ty Tomasi or Ty Bloss, and then also Randy Strong. We did a thing called Ragbri where we biked across Iowa, And then,
Oh, you
I
did that with
think,
Ty? Okay, that's cool. I didn't
yeah,
know you. All
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that with Ty in 2014. So, so yeah, we kind of like, hey, what about we, try to, do a triathlon? And, so that's where it's kind of cool having, friends that are willing to try, new things. So, she and I kind of reached out to an organization called Dare to Try. So Dare and then the number 2 and then try. They usually have a like a try it weekend or something where you can come, and they actually have some scholarships to help pay for expenses for you to come and kind of give it a try. You do a small sprint. And then I, did it locally here too. So yeah.
Wow. Good stuff. I know you've got that bottle of wine waiting for you, and it's already after 10 o'clock at night. So we'll wrap it up in 5 minutes. Anyone else have questions, or anyone else want to come back for seconds?
Anna Rishma, go ahead.
What's your favorite part of your job so far and why?
Okay, repeat that one more time.
What is your favorite part of your job? And,
Okay,
and why?
Okay, what is the favorite part of my job? Okay. All right. So it is probably knowing that I am going to learn something new. So, if I were working in a factory line somewhere, I know that I'm gonna make if I'm making a car, I'm gonna know every day I'm gonna make 10 cars that day, and I know what exactly is gonna happen. But when we're working with science or we're working in engineering or something like that, yes, you do have testing where you have to do it over and over again, but you're opening yourself up to like learning something new or trying a different technique. And while I went to school for, doing business or math or, the bit of engineering that I was in, I know I am going to continually have to kind of up my game. So that it means attending trainings or at least learning from someone else. And so what that would mean is just I guess I'm always having to change and grow.
Yeah, that keeps you sharp and mentally just adaptive to, things change.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I would say.
Whoops, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I kept muting myself. Orlando
Okay,
asks, what do you like
Orlando.
about NASA? Dina?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, Orlando asked in the chat, what do you like about NASA?
Oh my goodness.
What isn't there to like about NASA?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I think it is so big that there's always some kind of new work going on. So, there's someone who is doing things with machine learning, and then someone that's working with different kind of materials. So we have all different types of disciplines or different
Sure.
types of jobs. So, and I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room all the time,
Right.
but I am there to contribute an idea. And I think that's one thing that NASA is really big on, is, being open to hearing different ideas or having a discussion about it, and not getting shot down for it. I think that's what I like about it the most.
Okay, the question you probably get asked all the time, have you ever met an astronaut?
Actually, yes.
I had to ask
a
it.
couple of them. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you definitely feel like you're meeting someone who is, like a celebrity. You kind of
Sure.
feel like, oh my God, what do I say? What do I do? But ultimately, a lot of them are just like regular people. I mean,
Sure.
they have to work really hard to make it into the astronaut corps.
Oh, I bet.
But yeah, they're just like regular people. They depend on other people to do their job so they can do their own jobs, So it's like we work as a team together.
I like it. All right, guys. Any last questions before Dina goes celebrates her birthday?
Dina, we have something for you. We wanted to just say something. Happy birthday to you. Cha, cha, cha. Happy birthday to you. Cha,
Everybody.
Cha, cha.
Happy birthday, dear Dina.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh,
Hey.
thank you guys. Oh,
I have a
man,
question.
that's like
Happy
awesome.
Pavo, did you have a question?
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Go ahead, Pavo.
Happy birthday.
Is that your question?
Yes, it's more of a comment. Happy birthday.
Okay.
Thank you, Pablo.
Eric, you asked a question, but I see your hand raised. Did you already ask your question, or did I just miss it?
No, that's just because I forgot to lower it.
Oh, that's okay.
Hey, Richard,
Well,
really quick.
Yes,
Can I ask you-
Miguel. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So, Dina, would you ever want to go on a shuttle mission?
Ooh, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, actually recently, I just was on a World Union call. They are actually the European Space Agency is looking into opening up the astronaut corps for people with disabilities. They are running a kind of a pilot program for that. So it is actually something that could be happening within certainly your lifetime. I would love to, to do that, but oh my goodness, I think becoming a parent, it changes everything. Like going on a shuttle mission, even though it would be like one of my dreams, I also know the risk of doing it, that
Sure.
I would be kind of risking my life, to do this. And I wouldn't want to do anything that would, cause me to not be here for my son. So
yeah, are
it's
astronauts insured? There's there insurance for being in space? It's a high
I don't
deductible.
know. So Pablo, if you
And
had asked
even
me,
if you survive a space mission, like there are quite a few health risks too, like to being an astronaut. Like you get space radiation. Apparently they don't have strong bones once they get back. They break a lot of bones for that reason.
yes.
The heart
So
changes
actually,
its shape. So like
yeah, so that's part of what I think.
spherical and does all kinds of strange stuff. So yeah, humans aren't really meant to be in space.
Dina, go ahead and comment, and then I want to ask you one last question, and then we'll let you go because we're going to wrap it up. Liz is going to tease out what we're talking about next week in a minute.
Okay, and then we also had a request for Dina's information in the chat.
Yeah, that was my question. I was going to say, can I share your contact information, your email with folks? Okay.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think going back to, I think, was it Eric or someone, that is what ESA is looking at, is what would be the changes. Like, yes, we all would want to say that people with disabilities can do just about anything, but you have to factor in what is this spatial non-gravity environment that would kind of impact the body from liftoff to entry and exit and actually living in space. So there, I mean, ultimately it would help science along the way for a diverse group of people to start flying. But I think compared to what we see on TV, where people are living in space and doing cool stuff, we're still in the very infant stages of where we would like to be, as we see on TV.
Yeah, and then they'd have to figure out how to get your guide dog up into space too.
Yeah.
Right. I was just picturing like
that's
having
gonna
a
be a
spacesuit for
pretty
a
crazy
puppy.
thing.
Yeah, my dog would be like, hell no, I'm good.
Like, I'm not
good.
going.
Well, on Apple TV, Snoopy is in outer space. The Peanuts gang is in outer space. They have a show, so yeah, I'm sure it can be done. If Charlie Brown can do it, why can't we?
Then it must be
Right.
It must be true.
Yeah, Dina, thank you so much.
Seriously, Richard, are you
big.
gonna make more trouble for the astronauts? Trying to make the job harder?
Right. This has been one of our really, really top-notch presentations. Thank you so much. I know I've got you lined up for another interview with Career Connect down the line, but thank you so much. And let's all say thank you and happy birthday once again. Just a quick happy birthday to Dina, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, guys.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
Happy birthday.
All right, you go enjoy your night, and we'll be in touch. I'll share your email with everybody. And
Okay,
thank you
awesome.
again. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime.
All right, Miss Liz, what's coming up next week?
Next week, okay, so next week we are going to have a conversation on parenting, which Dina kind of started off for us tonight. So next week we have a panel of 4 parents that are going to be here, and hopefully you guys will have lots of good questions